Hello, my name is Aaron Edwards, co-founder and market consultant of Santos Springs. We offer grain marketing solutions to producers in multiple countries. Welcome to our W2H grain marketing channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I also recommend tapping the bell so you get future notifications. And if you like what you see, hit the like and share this video with other farmers who care deeply about their grain marketing. If you are a corn or soybean farmer, your revenue depends not only on your production, but also the answer to three simple questions: when, how much, and how you sell. One W, when, two H's, how and how much. Our W2H mentorship provides a clear, concise, and custom approach to answering each one of these three questions for your specific farm throughout the year. Before we start this week's content, it's always important to remember that trading in futures products entails significant risk of loss, which must be understood prior to trading and may not be appropriate for all investors. This commentary and the information contained within should be considered market commentary and reflect the opinions of the author. For those of you watching this with a delay, if you are a U.S. corn or soybean farmer and want to stop being held hostage by market uncertainty, let us teach you how to place each one of your bushels in a grain marketing strategy specifically designed to optimize your farm's revenue. Click on the link and we'll work together to see if our W2H mentorship is the right next step for your grain marketing.
Today is October 21st, 2025. The government is shut down. Markets are running on less information than they usually are, and they're just kind of neutral. It's kind of a clutch in position. We'll go over everything that's going on in the markets and talk a little bit about planting in Brazil. But first, let's start with the call to action. We always want that bias towards action. I'll get into it in a minute, and this has been several weeks running, but again for this week, no action recommended. That box is checked. And let's jump into a little bit of the thought process behind why no action is recommended this week. But first, let's just take a look at planting in Brazil, South America. The potentially biggest bullish story, or bearish story really, when it comes to soybeans, well, I guess I should phrase that two ways. From a demand standpoint, the potentially biggest story for soybeans would be a trade deal. All of a sudden we export a bunch of soybeans to China. That would be the biggest demand side story. But the biggest supply side story is planting in Brazil, in South America in general. South America raises roughly twice the soybeans, if you include Brazil and Argentina and other countries like Paraguay, twice as many soybeans as the US. So the Southern Hemisphere, 2 times more soybeans than Northern Hemisphere, ballpark, rounded numbers. And that's going into the ground now. So let's take a look at Brazil. Brazil is head and shoulders above the other countries. So let me go ahead and share that screen when it comes to soybean production. So these 12 states in Brazil, this is all in Portuguese, don't worry, you don't need to speak Portuguese. These 12 states represent 96% of the production of soybeans in Brazil. And let me just grab a marker here and mark it up a little bit, just some things to watch. Blue will be nice, okay. So if we look at blue, let me drag this to the corner. These 4 states up here at the top, that's a northeast expansion area. It's gaining traction and importance. It's a very exciting expansion area in Brazil. The main thing that I want to point out on that is that if you look at the historic averages, they're just barely getting started. So I said you didn't need to know Portuguese. Let me tell you what to look for. Okay, this column here, this is the historic average. That's the average of planting pace of the last 5 years. So yeah, planting's okay, but they're just right at the beginning. Historically, they're anywhere from 6.4% down to under 1% is the historic average planting. So there's not much of a story because they typically plant a little later. Same is true way down here for the state of Rio Grande do Sul. Their historic number for now would be 1.2% planted. And so they are under that. So what we really need to focus on, and I'll make this into red, is those states that historically plant a lot by now. Mato Grosso. Let me circle that a little better. Okay. This state alone is 1/3 of all of Brazil's soybean production. The state of Mato Grosso, 1/3. Other states that are at significant levels. São Paulo, although that's kind of small. Paraná's historically at close to 40%. Mato Grosso do Sul historically at 37%. So if we look at kind of those states that are over 30% historically by now, the main big one here is Mato Grosso is 10 percentage points behind, or 9. Paraná is on pace. São Paulo, 6 percentage points behind. Mato Grosso do Sul is about almost 3 percentage points behind. And if we look at that on a whole, we are 21.7% planted as opposed to the historic average of 27.7% planted. So just to make this real big and real clear, let's clear this out a little bit. Brazil is 6 percentage points behind pace. Let's just make this real big and obvious. So Brazil is 6% behind pace on planting. What does that mean? It doesn't mean a whole lot. They could play catch up pretty easily. Here's a couple of things to remember. It's very important. It varies region by region, but 75-80% of Brazil's corn is produced as a double crop to soybeans. So they've had a drier year. There is rain expected, and ballpark, Brazil should be 30% planted on soybeans in order to give you a window for double crop corn. So the big question, planting did not advance as fast as I expected it would over the last week. Can Brazil close a gap? Historically, they would be almost 28% planted by now, so wrapping up that last 2% by the end of October isn't that big of a deal. But historically, but they're, as of the 18th, they were under 22% planted. Can they plant 8 percentage points in between now and the end of October? Yeah, a little bit, 10 days, that's fine. That's light work, assuming good field conditions. Two things can happen. Forecasted rains cannot come, and then all of a sudden it's dry and we're talking replant, potentially bullish, or the rains turn off, they turn on, but don't turn off. If that's the case, it's okay for soybeans, but it's potentially reduced acreage for corn down the road. So if you watched last week's video, I was not overly concerned about this because I just thought we'd probably it's probably not a story, right? So there wasn't much to share. Now, they did not make the planting progress I expected. I thought they would have closed that gap. They're still about 6 percentage points behind. There could be a bullish story. I'm not going to say it is a bullish story, but there could be a bullish story. As we always do, the pyramid market plan portfolio, making sure all of your bushels have a home, have a strategy based on that, seasonals, funds, technicals, and that gives us our call to action, which makes this year particularly, not this year, but this week really hard because we're kind of flying blind, right? We didn't get last USDA report because of the government shutdown. We haven't been getting weekly crop progress reports because of the government shutdown. And we're not getting updated. This is the one that bugs me the most. We're not getting updated position of the funds. So we don't know if speculators are buying or selling or neutral. We don't know what the big money's doing in Chicago because of the government shutdown. So, and any aid that might have been coming towards the farmers, as all those checks aren't being mailed. So there's an issue here. We really do need to get the government open. What's very interesting is, as much as we complain about reports and not being right, but we've kind of seen the market progressively kind of, putting it in neutral or maybe stepping in on the clutch, just saying, I'm not sure really what's going on with the numbers. I'm kind of flying blind and I don't really want to stick my neck out. It'll make more sense when we go over the charts. So let me go ahead and share this. We're going to start with soybeans. There's no chart from the position of the funds because there's no funds. So let's mark this up with black. Let me get the black here. This is November soybeans. And if you want to kind of think about it this way, the lows are getting higher and higher and higher, and the highs are getting lower and lower and lower. And then we had the government shutdown, and then at first it looked like it was a sell-off, and then it looked like it was a buy. Now it's already kind of running out of steam. It really looks like nobody's sticking their neck out, and we're just going to ping pong into some point until the market has to break one way or another. It seems like we're just really drawing that wedge in the market. So no action recommended. Why? Yeah, beans might go down a little bit. Unless there's some real reason why they should go all the way down, they'll probably go down till on November contract till $10.15 or $10 or $10.10 or something like that. Maybe I doubt even $10. And then, okay, we lose 30 cents, and then we come up 10 cents, and then we lose 7 cents, and then we go up 5, and it just keeps teetering back and forth within a wedge. Markets really don't want to give their opinion. And if you look, this line right here shows the average price of the last 200 sessions. It's not a straight line, but it's just if we were to extrapolate that out, and we're just right in line with the average price of the last 10 months. Nobody really wants to buy it. Nobody really wants to sell it. Farmers can't really make money. Why does it bug me so much that we don't know the position of the funds? Because let's say that we had this change in price and speculators were buying. Prices went up, speculators are buying. Okay, if speculators are buying, they're bullish. If farmers just say, I'm not going to sell, chances are we would have made a move up until here or up until here because speculators are buying. You get that frenzy. Farmers say, speculators are buying. I'm going to, not sell into this. And then you make a move up. Or if we knew, okay, prices are moving up, but speculators are taking these higher priced opportunities to sell. All right, they're pretty bearish. If we know what speculators are doing, because we can make a pretty good idea of what decisions farmers have, right? So if you know what speculators are doing, you can have a good idea. Now there's always things we can read into the market, and here's a classic example. Even though we don't know what speculators are doing on this last move up, so we moved up on the November contract. But I want to explain here what happened on that last move up. So November SX, that's the NOV contract, it went up, but SX, which is November, minus SF, so the NOV minus Jan spread, which is what we're looking here, went down. So we had, on this last move up, November beans were going up, but January was going up faster than November, and so that spread was actually coming down. So we had, it's a bullish move with a bearish spread. It's a bullish move with a bearish spread. Whenever that happens, really what happens is okay, markets are going up, but there's not very much conviction at all in that. It's bear spreading. So the fact that markets are coming back down, not really that surprising. The saying is cash spreads futures. And to just explain that in very clear terms, the first thing you see move in let's describe it bullishness, right? You see a cash market start picking up. Oh wow, cash prices are picking up. Then, okay, cash goes up, and then they say, well, it's getting kind of expensive to buy cash. I'll just go buy it on the board, and then they buy the nearby month. So cash goes up first, and then spreads, which means that your nearby month trades stronger than your deferred. So cash, goes up like that. So the first thing, cash markets go up, then spreads go up, the nearby trades higher than the deferred, and then finally you can get that more sustained bullish rally. So what we had was, futures went up, but the spreads went down. That's a lack of steam. It's coming back down. How low will it go? I kind of think we're probably going to just see that spread either stabilize or go up a tiny bit more is kind of what I expect to see. But we'll keep a close eye on it, especially coming into next week. A lot of basis contracts need to be rolled if you're going to stay long or you need to buy a position. So we could see that spread widen out, but it's very hard to know how those spreads are going to behave with as many moving pieces, especially again, since we don't know what the speculators are doing. But that spread's something that I'm watching very closely. And then now let's shift gears to corn. Let me grab the marker here on the corn. Let's do blue here. So the good news on the corn is we did get into an uptrend, at least on the December corn, and so far we're holding it. March corn is it's already kind of teetering on that in today's session. Will we maintain that uptrend or not? How optimistic can we be? So basically, if we're drawing this line, either it's going to go like that or it's going to go like that, and corn's going to make a run up to probably 435 or 440, or it's going to make a run down here. Can it go all the way down to 4? Well, my thought is every time we've gone there, that's been a kind of a no-brainer buy. So I think likely, if I were to guess, let's say it goes down, I'm guessing that somewhere in here between 410 and 4, we already get a pretty significant amount of buying pressure. Even if farmers are kind of dumping their grain, go buy calls I just think we likely get quite a bit of buying pressure in that $4 to $4.10 range. And maybe this is already a buy. Maybe, 420 is a buy. Some of you, I did optional buys here, maybe even 425, depending on where you got in. And I wouldn't say jump ship on any of those. We could definitely turn a corner here. I think corn will rally. The natural trend of corn would be to rally, but we very likely need to get a little bit of help from the cash markets. I won't pull up the basis charts, but it is really a tale of two markets when it comes to basis. So in the Eastern Corn Belt, I'm not saying basis is good. It's not, but it is in line with historic averages or slightly better. So based on, if you look at a 3 or 5 year historic basis level, most of the Eastern Corn Belt is at or even slightly above the historic basis level for harvest, which in all fairness is typically the worst basis of the year. But basis in the Eastern Corn Belt is pretty normal. In the Western Corn Belt, it's a whole different story. We have basis levels well below the historic averages. Also, if you look at storage deficit, we've had a monster crop. So where are you going to put all that crop? There's a deficit to storage in parts of the Western Corn Belt, and that's also weighing on basis. Once we get out of, once all of the corn and beans, once they find a home, whether that's a pile or, once they find a home, even if that's not in a bin, but, they've been moved or everybody knows what's going to happen. I expect the Western Corn Belt will get a basis that it gradually increases similar to historic averages, and the Eastern Corn Belt's already there. Typically, between harvest and the end of the year, we see a basis uptick. And that basis uptick, it's a coin flip, whether that's you have a better basis improvement than the cost of storage to the end of the year or not. It's pretty fairly priced, so to speak. Should you put your grain in custom storage and for the basis increase, or should you just accept the basis because then you don't pay storage? And that's kind of a coin toss. I think having one horse in each race makes sense on overrun bushels that need to be moved by the end of the year, basically. But I expect basis will increase. So we have corn and soybeans in a very boring, not really low enough to buy, not really high enough to sell, not really clear which direction they're going. They're just kind of a clutch in, or they're in neutral. We have the government shutdown, so we don't know official numbers on the position of the funds, on crop estimates out of the USDA, on crop progress on the weekly basis. There's just so many headlines. There's a lot of headlines and not very much data that we're used to tracking, and markets are kind of just flying blind. In the midst of all that, it's October. It's not really a time that we typically want to be selling. So let's just briefly summarize what all of this means. Seasonally, it is a buy for corn. Seasonally, it is a buy for soybeans. Managed money, those are question marks. We don't know. We don't get the reports because the government shut down. Trend for corn, contract by contract, I should probably put that at neutral, but we did actually get into an uptrend on December corn. And beans, they are in an uptrend, but it's a very shy uptrend. Basis levels, let me go ahead and get the mic here. Basis levels in the Eastern Corn Belt are at or above historic levels for harvest. On the other hand, in the Western Corn Belt, where storage deficiencies are more evident, basis is below historic harvest levels. I expect basis levels will improve across the Corn Belt between now and the end of the year. It looks like farmers, consumers of grain, and speculators alike are all pretty much to the sidelines on markets. The time of year and government shutdown give us little information to go on, and markets seem content to trade at or below the average prices they've been at recently. It would be great to have clarity and know which direction the market's going. Even if they were lower, we got a solid dip to where we could really come in and say, okay, let's go buy this. That would almost be more helpful than this kind of middle of the road. Do I buy? Do I sell? That being said, markets always do something, right? They always change. They always give us a direction. Soybeans have been gradually working towards this wedge for really about 12 months. And maybe there's a bullish story out of South America. Maybe we're going to get a double whammy of friendly news on demand plus a bullish story out of South America. Beans can move fast. We've seen them move fast. But there's just nothing to go on this week, at least so far. I expect next week we'll be sitting in a fairly similar situation, but hopefully with more clarity on direction. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. Be safe as you wrap up harvest.